Hi and welcome back to another video feature of the Immersive Worlds Handbook. In this feature, I will be focusing on my favorite pavilions of the World Expo in Milan in 2015. Favorites. What an innovative approach to a pavilion. Metaphorically very sound. For me, the idea that we depend on one another, and when someone moves next to you on the net, you feel that it pushes you off course, and then you regain your course and so forth. So, for me, one of the real exciting pavilions at the Expo for a variety of reasons, but this approach to architecture, the performativity, including the body as part of the pavilion, I think is quite brilliant. So definitely on my list of favorites here at Expo 2015 in Milan. So right now I'm inside the Spain pavilion as the lights go off. Coming back on here, I have to say this is so far a highlight. I think from a design standpoint, from an immersive space standpoint, technological standpoint, they hit it out of the park in terms of this pavilion. So I'm going to show you some of the images from the video and take a chance to look at this approach to design and technology here at the Spain pavilion at the Milan World Expo 2015. And certainly there were so many things to like about the Pavilion of Spain. The approach they took to design. I would also say the emphasis on highly interactive technology. You see some examples here. As well, the fact that they focused so exclusively on the concept of food, as we see the legendary Ferran Adrià here, I thought was also very unique because so many other pavilions emphasize political or environmental issues. And I would certainly point to this amazing video installation that the guest sees at the end of his or her visit as another example of something that absolutely just took the pavilion to an entirely different level. So all around an amazing experience at Spain at Expo 2015. So walk alongside the exterior of the building, I have to certainly include the Bahrain Pavilion in my list of favorite buildings here at Expo 2015. Be sure to check out the video I did and look at some, or read or reflect on some of the narratives here at the pavilion, because what is so interesting to me about how they've approached things is it's so incredibly soft-spoken, it's conceptual in nature, they don't hit you over the head with a lot of information, but instead they try to create, I think, resonances in terms of thinking about some of the pressing issues by reflecting back on the past through archaeology. So overall, I think a very brilliant conceptual approach that stands out on its own very uniquely here at World Expo in Milan. And certainly Pavilion Zero is way at the top of my list in terms of the sites to see at World Expo 2015 Milan, in no small part because of the dramatic approach, the scale, the thought, the concept that went into designing so many of the spaces within the Expo, including the very opening space of the Theatrum, which is, I think, one of the top spaces I've seen in my entirety of the time here at the World Expo in Milan. And indeed, I could show you so many images and videos from Pavilion Zero, but I chose this one, which I thought made the point so powerfully about the chaotic and rather dismal nature of our world in terms of consumerism, in terms of technology, in terms of all the issues that the Pavilion Zero and many of the other spaces in the Expo highlight. So for me, this was such a powerful statement that sets you up for the next room, which was this room of aesthetically created waste and garbage. So many powerful messages at Pavilion Zero. And with the Russian pavilion behind me, I certainly have to say that Russia is on my list of favorite pavilions here at the Expo, and let me show you a little bit of why this is the case. And first off, I would say that the architecture itself certainly warrants my including the Russian Pavilion as one of the top at the Expo in 2015. Very iconic architecture, invites the guest. There's this whole mirroring that goes on as you're looking up at the pavilion structure. So very, very unique. But then as we get inside, it's hard to ignore the number of different innovative, creative, aesthetic ways that they went about using technology. And as is the case in all these videos I describe here, you should look at the longer versions of the videos in which I go through, in this case, the Russian Pavilion in much more depth. But I'm reusing this footage to emphasize some of the incredible technology. And technology that also offered a sense of spectacle to the guest. In this case, there is a mini bar set up with all the trappings of a futuristic sci-fi lab, which is a bar that has flavored waters. And so this was one of many examples that technology is used in a highly innovative way. As I walk by the Italian pavilion, certainly I have to include it on my list of top pavilions at Expo 2015 Milan. And let me show you a little bit of why that's the case. Okay, and I think I have to begin with the iconic architecture. Maybe the most dramatic architectural structure at the whole expo. If you read about the concrete used here, it's a special concrete that was designed to trap pollutants and so forth. The architecture itself then is highly dramatic. And as you get inside, you get this really intensely personal journey. I enjoyed the fact that they focused so much on the diversity of culture and identity at the pavilion here in terms of Italian culture. And you see this display here, which for me was one of the most telling and interesting ones. The intimacy of showing us figures, individuals from different identity placements, different careers, different genders, different ethnicities. And thus for me, it created a surprisingly personal and intimate connection in this gargantuan pavilion that could have taken things in a much different direction. So its focus on personalization identity was absolutely key for me at the Italian pavilion. With Slovakia just behind me, I also have to say that Slovakia is one of my favorite pavilions at the Expo 2015 Milan, and let me show you a little bit of why that's the case. As I said in my other video feature on the Slovakia pavilion, I was entirely surprised by the pavilion. I'm not sure what I was expecting, but what I got was quite different than my expectation. This interactive opportunity to develop your own creativity, to write whatever you wanted to write, here on these mannequins, in this interesting artwork. I thought this was very unique for an expo. And there were a lot of things in the Slovakia pavilion like this. Other examples of artworks, other examples of very personal and conceptual approaches to thinking about issues. So for me, they didn't try to do everything. They focused very clearly in this medium-sized pavilion on a few things to do well, and they created memorable experiences that I feel the guests could take with him or her after they exited the pavilion and left the expo. And this is one example among many that were memories that stuck with me after visiting the Pavilion of Slovakia at the Expo in 2015. And next up on my list of favorite pavilions is that of Slovenia. And Slovenia was quite an amazing pavilion that surprised me, not unlike Slovakia, for the subtlety that it used to approach the subjects. As I'll talk about in a video I recorded on site, very poetic, very abstract in some cases, and all the while focusing on an intimate portrait of Slovenian culture. So here's my on-site reflection. But I liked how they took a symbolic, allegorical approach to presenting things with the water, with the salt, sparse use of quotations, but very evocative quotations of poets and other figures, and a real sense for, I think, focus. Again, by emphasizing key issues and not trying to do everything like, say, Germany does, which maybe is a bit too much context and too much interactivity. Slovenia, I think, is onto something here in terms of focusing on the very symbolic aspects and the key aspects to address here in terms of their presentation of culture and place. And next on my list of favorites is Estonia. I think Estonia was an absolutely wonderful pavilion. And one of the key reasons for this was they took this approach of the gallery of ideas. These miniature spaces that each dealt with a different topic. All the while, all of these holistically seem to be interconnected to one another. I think conceptually, it was the very best of pavilions for this particular approach. There was so much to see, there was so much to do. The queue times were great because you could move through at your own pace. I mean, it truly was a conceptual pavilion, an aesthetic pavilion, and a highly interactive one all at the same time. As you can see as I'm looking around here, there's just so much to see and so much to do here at the Estonia Pavilion at the World Expo. And certainly near the top of my list is the Pavilion of the United Arab Emirates. A remarkable pavilion starting with the incredible architecture of Norman Foster and these amazing boxes that allowed the guests to focus in on some of the Expo themes, to this uplifting show and musical number that was presented through a number of video rooms. And then the very interesting, near the end of the Expo Pavilion, these very interesting conceptual, technological miniature cities, and the many efforts to immerse the guest in forms of technology that was thoroughly immersive and surprising all at the same time. As well, the vision that it presented for the next Expo, which it'll be hosting in 2020. And these are all reasons that I found the United Arab Emirates Pavilion to be so powerful. And next on my list of favorites is the Pavilion of Morocco. As I talked about in my video feature, this was the pavilion in which the guests could experience all the sensory aspects of Morocco and the various issues that were being dealt with in the pavilion. It was truly the most captivating sensory experience of the Expo. And here you saw an example of that, this ability to create the sense of the heat of the desert through this use of fans. And then going into the next room, one encountered many other examples of sensory technologies. And next on the list is Germany. And Germany is certainly one of the most outstanding, if not the most outstanding, pavilions at the World Expo. There was so much to think about. Well, one thing that was so key to me was the use of these seed books, these highly interactive technological devices that surprised me as such an immersive technology that drew me into the narrative of the pavilion. And then the second thing that I really enjoyed about Germany's approach to the Expo was this focus on story and narrative, developing characters early on in the journey and continuing those later. But again, I go back to the seed book here as such a form of innovation that we witnessed at the German pavilion. And I cannot say enough about the pavilion of South Korea. There were so many amazing things, ranging from the first initial impressions here of this altered evolutionary diagram to the tasteful and aesthetically pleasing approaches to design and text, as you can see here throughout the first part of the pavilion. As well, I would suggest that the South Korean approach to the Expo was to focus on a very reflexive journey, the most introspective of all the journeys that I took part in while going through the various pavilions at Expo 2015. So South Korea certainly stands out as one of the top pavilions. And last on my list is the Pavilion of Switzerland. As I'm describing here in another video feature, I'm talking about how amazing this experience is because the emphasis in this pavilion is on the guest, him or herself. The point is that you interact with 4 different specific food items: water, salt, coffee, and apple. And you have a choice whether or not to take these with you.
And as you are considering this choice to take these with you, you see already that other people have taken these from the expo grounds, and thus suggesting to us the issue of scarcity and the issue of conservation and the issue of personal responsibility. So for me, this was a true highlight of the expo because you were forced to question your own responsibility. You were forced to think about your own complicity in systems that certainly lead to shortage of food resources for people on the planet, to starvation, to overpopulation, to issues related to sustainability and environmental degradation. So all the while you went through this experience at the Swiss Pavilion, you were forced to think about your own sense of personal responsibility. And for me, this was such a highlight at the Expo because it forced you to leave with this political notion in hand. So all the pavilions were quite amazing, and the Swiss one stands out for this focus on politics and personal responsibility. Enjoyed this video feature today here at Expo 2015, in which I focused on some of my favorite pavilions that I experienced throughout the course of my visit to the Expo.